other country in the European Union to sort out the mess that they've created.
Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, I think the honourable gentleman is confusing our proposals in the White Paper for the future relationship with our proposals for the legal text, the binding text for the protocol for paragraph 49 of the joint report, which we committed to a legal text, and we are working with the European Union on coming up with a text that we can all live with. But we will not accept the text that was put forward by the European Commission.
Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary, with no hint of irony, talks about consistency from this government. The reality is their obsession with ending free movement of people is going to require some form of border control. So how does she square ending free movement of people with her obligations under the Belfast Agreement?
Mr. Speaker, the people of the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union, and that means we will regain control of our laws, our borders and our money. But we will also ensure that we meet our commitments that we made in the joint report in December to ensuring no hard border on the island of Ireland and no border in the Irish Sea.
Me Wilson.
Collecting duties on trade across the border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic currently happens and doesn't present any problems. The real damage to Northern Ireland and to the integrity of the United Kingdom would be to have regulatory alignment between Northern Ireland and the Republic, giving the EU control over our laws rather than London having control over laws in Northern Ireland. Can she give an assurance that under no circumstances will she agree to the backstop arrangement demanded by the EU, which would split up the United Kingdom by having laws determined?
We're immensely grateful, but far too long. Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I will refer the honourable gentleman back to the comments of my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, where she said no Prime Minister of the United Kingdom could accept the text put forward by the European Commission.
Order. Questions to the Prime Minister. Tulip Siddiq.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure that members from all sides of the House would like to join me in congratulating both the English and the Scottish women's football teams for their excellent performance in qualifying for next year's World Cup. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Tulip Siddiq.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my constituent, Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, was released temporarily for 3 days last month before being hauled back to prison in Iran. Worse still, when she was on furlough, she was contacted by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard saying that if she attempted to contact the British Embassy, her family would be harmed. I find it deeply troubling that a British citizen was threatened against contacting her own embassy. Does the Prime Minister share my concern, and will she raise the specific issue with President Rouhani when she next speaks to him, perhaps in New York later this month?
Can I say to the Honourable Lady that I share the concerns that she has expressed, and our thoughts, I know, across the whole House remain with Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe during this difficult time, and with her family and her friends who have been campaigning tirelessly, obviously, for her release. The Honourable Lady will know, as this is her constituent, that one of the difficulties is the question of whether or not the Iranian government recognises dual nationality, which they do not, and they're not obliged to under international law. She asked me to raise this matter with President Rouhani. I regularly do whenever I speak to President Rouhani. It's an issue also that the Foreign Secretary, the Foreign Office, other ministers consistently raise with the Iranian government, and we will continue to do so.
Maggie Throup.
Anti-Semitism has no place in British public life. Will my right honourable friend assure the House that she will always work to make sure that this remains the case?
Can I say to my honourable friend, Jewish people living in this country should feel safe and secure and not have to worry about their futures in their own country. There is no place for racial hatred in our society, and it's important that we take every step to tackle it. That's why, as a government, we were the first country in the world to adopt the definition of anti-Semitism set out by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. We've been taking steps, providing funding to ensure security measures can be taken in Jewish faith schools and synagogues, and we've provided funding to the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust to run events for Holocaust Memorial Day. I believe that we should all be united in our determination to tackle anti-Semitism. So when the leader of the Labour Party stands up, he should apologise for saying that Jewish people who have lived in this country their whole lives do not understand English irony.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, there is no place for racism in any form within our society. On that we're all agreed, and we should tackle it wherever it arises, in our own parties as well, and that includes the Conservative Party. I join the Prime Minister in congratulating the English and Scottish women's teams on their qualification for the World Cup, and I look forward to them doing extremely well. Mr. Speaker, the International Trade Secretary said the likelihood of a no deal is now 60-40, which in betting parlance means it's a pretty good chance there won't be a deal, which means more likely than not. So, Prime Minister, is he right?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, we are continuing to do what we have always been doing, which is working to get a good deal with the European Union for our future relationship once we have left the European Union. But it is entirely right and proper that we should prepare for all eventualities, because we haven't come to the end of the negotiations. That means that it's right that we are preparing for no deal, as indeed the European Union have been doing, sending out notices in relation to no deal. So we have been publishing technical notices so that businesses and citizens would know where they stand and how to prepare in the event of no deal. We've published over 20 so far, and the final total is likely to be around 70. We are making those preparations, but crucially, what this government is doing is working for a good deal, preparing for every eventuality, and preparing to ensure that this country makes success of leaving the EU regardless of the outcome of the negotiations.
So, Mr. Speaker, the International Trade Secretary says he's unfazed by no deal. The new Foreign Secretary who's here this morning says that over the summer that a no-deal Brexit would be a huge geostrategic mistake. And the Chancellor, who's sitting next to her, has written to the Treasury Select Committee stating that a no-deal Brexit would slash GDP by almost 8%, comparable with the global financial crash. Which assessment does she agree with?
The Director of the World Trade Organization said that no deal would not be a walk in the park, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. The government is right. The government is right to make the necessary preparations for no deal, while at the same time we are working for a good deal to ensure that we deliver on the vote of the British people, that we come out of the European Union on the 29th of March 2019, that we do so in a way that protects jobs and livelihoods, ensures no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and maintains the precious union of our United Kingdom. And on one thing, I'm clear. We're working for that outcome, and we will not have a second referendum. He should stand up and rule out a second referendum.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says no deal is better than a bad deal. The Chancellor says no deal would cause a catastrophic collapse of our economy. And yesterday, the Brexit Secretary waded in to say that there were countervailing opportunities to a no-deal Brexit. Could the Prime Minister enlighten us what these countervailing opportunities actually are?
As I said to the right honourable gentleman in answer to his first question, this government is working to ensure that whatever the outcome of the negotiations, this country makes success of coming out of the European Union. We see that global Britain and a brighter future for people here in this country. But interestingly, I suggested to the right honourable gentleman, yet again, as I have done on other occasions, that he stand up and categorically rule out a second referendum. He refused to do so, so I'll give him another opportunity to do it now.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, a majority of people might have voted to leave, but they expected the negotiations to be handled competently, and they certainly are not. And I didn't hear a single one of these countervailing opportunities. I say to the Prime Minister quite simply this: she can't keep dancing round all the issues. And it seems that Mr. Speaker, that Panasonic have taken the cue and have decided to dance off altogether. They're relocating out of this country. Could the Prime Minister tell the House how many other companies have been in touch with her or her ministerial team and told her privately that they intend to relocate in the absence of a serious, sensible deal with the European Union?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, what we have seen is businesses showing confidence in our economy. In August, Dyson announced £200 million of investment in their electric vehicle testing facility in Wiltshire. Two Sisters Food Group, Bernard Matthews, have won major new contracts with supermarkets, underpinning 600 new jobs. The Hut Group have announced 200 new tech jobs in Salford. We welcomed £130 million of foreign direct investment in our automotive sector from 4 companies in July, generating around 500 new jobs. What we're doing is negotiating a Brexit deal that will deliver for this country, deliver on the vote of the British people, and that will ensure we do so protecting jobs, maintaining our union, and ensuring no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. And what do we get from the right honourable gentleman? From the right honourable gentleman said that he wanted to do new trade deals. Now he wants to be in the customs union. At one stage, the right honourable gentleman was asked about his view on free movement. He said, Labour is not wedded to freedom of movement for EU citizens as a point of principle, but nor do we rule it out. So he can't even agree with himself on his own position.
I'm not quite sure who the Prime Minister is listening to, but she may have heard from the National Farmers Union that says it will be an Armageddon scenario. The TUC says a no-deal Brexit would be devastating for working people. The EU's chief negotiator and President Macron both seem to have categorically ruled out the Prime Minister's Chequers proposals. So we're now at a critical point. Can the Prime Minister tell the House if she believes a deal will be reached by the agreed deadline of October? That's October 2018, not any other one.
I say to the right honourable gentleman, we are working for a good deal. We're still working, as are the European Union, for the timetable that was set of October, because we're leaving the European Union on the 29th of March 2019. We will need to pass legislation in this House prior to our leaving the European Union. But he talks about no deal, and he talks about a deal. I'll tell him what would be bad for this country. That would be signing up to deal at any price whatsoever, which is the position of the Labour Party. That would destroy jobs. That would be bad for the British people.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Yesterday, the Brexit Secretary admitted there had been some slippage. Today, Lord King condemned the incompetence of the preparation, saying it beggars belief that the 6th biggest economy in the world should get itself into that position. The Prime Minister has repeatedly said that no deal is better than a bad deal. But no deal is a bad deal. And everyone from the CBI to the TUC to her own Chancellor are telling her the same thing. The Chequers proposal is dead, already ripped apart by her own MPs. When will the Prime Minister publish a real plan that survives contact with her Cabinet and with reality? Those are, of course, two very separate concepts. When will we get proposals that put jobs and the economy ahead of the survival of herself and her own government?
We have published a plan that we are discussing with the European Union that ensures that we deliver on the vote of the British people, that ensures that we bring an end to free movement, that we come out of the CAP, come out of the common fisheries policy, no longer send vast amounts of money to the EU every year, no longer have the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice here in this country, that we don't have a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and we don't have a border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. What I'm doing is negotiating a Brexit deal for Britain. I'm making sure that the economy works for everyone. I'm building a stronger, fairer country. What is the right honourable gentleman doing? He's trying to change his party so anti-Semites can call the creation of Israel racist. And he should be ashamed of himself.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister will be aware of the campaign to extend the Borders Railway from Tweedbank to Hawick, Newcastleton and on to Carlisle. This will provide a huge boost to the local economy and will help demonstrate what Scotland's two governments can do for my region. So what will the Prime Minister do to ensure the sufficient resource in the Borderlands growth deal to allow this project to move forward?
Can I say to my honourable friend that I understand the importance to partners across the region of the campaign and the proposal that he has referred to. I'm sure he understands this is a devolved transport issue, but I would certainly encourage all parties that are involved to come to a workable solution and to ensure the best outcome for the entire region, because this can bring great benefits. And in addition to the point he made about the Borderlands growth deal, can I assure him that the UK and Scottish governments will continue to work in partnership to deliver that deal?
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I congratulate Scotland and England in qualifying for the World Cup. All of us in Scotland are immensely proud of our Scottish women's team. Mr Speaker, when the Tories introduced Thatcher's poll tax in the 1980s, Scotland was used as a guinea pig. The Scottish Tories paid a price for their folly. They were wiped off the political map of Scotland. The Prime Minister's Chequers plan is even more unpopular than the poll tax. Why is the Prime Minister gambling with Scotland's future by taking us out of the EU against her will with her disastrous Chequers plan?
The only people who are gambling with Scotland's future are the Scottish National Party, who want to take Scotland out of the United Kingdom.
Well, that was no answer to the question. I should remind the Prime Minister it's Prime Minister's question. Mr Speaker, Michelle Barnier has said that the Chequers plan is not acceptable. Mervyn King has called the government's preparations incompetent. Prime Minister, your Chequers plan is as dead as a dodo. With the clock ticking down, will the Prime Minister now finally concede that backing the single market and customs union is the only option to protect jobs, to protect the economy and to protect the Good Friday Agreement?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that we have put forward a proposal under the Chequers plan that protects jobs, that protects livelihoods, that ensures that we deliver on the vote of the British people, that ensures that we deliver on no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and maintain the union of the United Kingdom. Michelle Barnier has put forward another proposal which keeps Northern Ireland in the customs union and the single market, which is a free trade agreement only for Great Britain, which creates a border down the Irish Sea. I have said, and I've said that it is unacceptable to me as Prime Minister. I believe there is no British Prime Minister who would find that deal acceptable that is being proposed there. We're negotiating on the Chequers deal. It delivers for the United Kingdom. It delivers for the people of the whole of the United Kingdom.
Eddie Hugh.
Mr Speaker, Walsall Manor Hospital serves many of my constituents and it desperately needs a new and extended A&E department. With other hospitals in the Black Country supporting their bid, can the Prime Minister assure me that some of the £20 billion additional funding for the NHS is coming to Walsall to improve A&E provision?
Can I say to my honourable friend that we are committed to providing the local NHS with the funding they need. We have, as he knows, announced over £3.9 billion of new additional capital funding for the NHS up to 2022-23. We announced that last year. The majority support the implementation of plans from local communities. I understand that the Walsall Healthcare NHS Trust have resubmitted an application for the £36.2 million of funding in July for the Walsall Manor Hospital Emergency Department. The Department of Health and Social Care expect the successful schemes to be announced in the autumn, but my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, will be pleased to meet my honourable friend to discuss his campaign.
Brendan O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rural Scotland, including my Argyll and Bute constituency, is facing a depopulation crisis, a crisis that will be exacerbated by Brexit. Last week, Cleland Snedden, the Chief Executive of Argyll and Bute Council, added his name to those calling for a more flexible, devolved and regional immigration policy, and offered Argyll and Bute as a test case and a pilot area to test this. Will the Prime Minister agree to meet with myself and the Chief Executive of Argyll and Bute to discuss the merits of such a proposal?
Can I welcome the honourable gentleman to asking a question here at the PMQs, but can I say to him, he's asked a question about a regional immigration policy, which is actually something which the Migration Advisory Committee looked at a while back and made very clear that this was not a situation that they felt the government should accept because of the practical problem, partly because of the practical problems in implementing that. When we put forward our proposals for the immigration policy for people coming from the European Union, we will be ensuring that we put forward proposals that are right for the whole of the United Kingdom.
Amber Rudd.
From PNR, these are all EU-wide databases, a lot of which the UK helped to shape, which keep us safe. While there is much debate here about the type of trading arrangement we will have with the EU, can I ask the Prime Minister for reassurance that there will still be the highest level of security arrangement with the EU as we leave the European Union, because any reduction in that is completely unacceptable to the people of the UK?
Can I say to my right honourable friend that she's absolutely right to highlight the importance of our security relationship with the EU. I remember the discussions, the debates that led to the establishment of the PNR directive. The White Paper does provide a comprehensive and ambitious vision for that future security relationship, and that's why we're proposing that security partnership to protect our shared law enforcement and criminal justice capabilities, facilitate continued cooperation and support our joint working on security issues such as counter-terrorism. And Michel Barnier has recognised the progress made in our discussions on security. So our focus should be on trying to obtain and define that ambitious and unprecedented partnership which will help to keep not just people here safe, but people across the whole of the EU safe.
Law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The opening of the V&A Museum of Design next week in my city of Dundee is already attracting worldwide attention, expecting to have up to 500,000 visitors in its first year, and will drive millions of pounds into the local economy. The Prime Minister will also be aware that an announcement to confirm funding for the Tay Cities deal is imminent and that improved connectivity is key to driving the prosperity of the Tay City region. Therefore, as an air link to Dundee was part of Heathrow's successful bid for the third runway, will the Prime Minister today express a firm commitment for the introduction of a new direct air service to Dundee by 2021 and the associated investment required to secure this?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman, he's right to bring to the attention of the House both the D-side deal and as he says, the opening of the V&A in Dundee. These are important ways in which the UK government is working to ensure that support for Scotland and that those opportunities in relation to the Scottish economy. Another one of those is the fact that this is a government that has taken the decision to enable a third runway to go ahead at Heathrow, and we do expect when that happens that we will see better connectivity within the United Kingdom.
Henry Smith.
Mr. Speaker, this September is Blood Cancer Awareness Month, and therefore I'm delighted that yesterday it was announced the NHS will be providing innovative CAR T-cell immune therapy to under-25s, the first health system anywhere in Europe to do so. Can I seek assurances from my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, that a focus on blood cancer awareness and diagnosis and prevention will continue into the future.
Well, can I first of all commend my honourable friend for the work that he has done to champion the cause of blood cancer and raising a much greater awareness of this issue, and I can assure him that this will continue to be an issue that we want to press on and continue to raise awareness of. And like him, I'm pleased that the government has been able to make that the decision has been able to be made, as he referred to, was announced yesterday. But once again, I congratulate my honourable friend because he has personally campaigned on this and championed this cause.
Dr. Rupa Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister and I both have seats around Heathrow Airport, and both campaigned for years against its damaging effects on our constituents and its expansion. But when it came to the third runway vote, she shifted. If I can understand her change of heart because new facts emerged and it wasn't the same proposal as it was years ago, can she not apply the same logic and allow the electorate the final say on the final Brexit deal?
What a leader said.
Can I say to the honourable lady, an ingenious attempt to raise that Brexit issue. This Parliament overwhelmingly gave the decision to the British people as to whether to remain or leave the European Union. The British people voted. It is now up to this government, and I believe politicians across the whole House, to show our faith with the British people and deliver on their vote.
Damien Green.
Time when this House will inevitably be spending a lot of time discussing Brexit. I think it's important we should concentrate on other issues, and for many families, their own children's future is a very immediate concern. With that in mind, does the Prime Minister agree that making sure as many children as possible grow up in a household where someone is working is not only the best way to provide a secure economic background for children, but also the best way of ensuring that future generations are prepared to play a full productive role in society?
Can I say I absolutely agree with my right honourable friend. Work is the best route out of poverty, but I think it's also important for the example it gives to children in households when they see a parent or parents working. I'm pleased to say that we now see that the levels in relation to children being brought up in workless households is at the lowest level that we've seen. This is very important. We know that 3/4 of children move out of poverty when their parents go into full-time work. For the example it shows, for the benefit it brings to those children, for the benefit it brings to the family, and the benefits for our society as a whole, ensuring that that the jobs are provided so those people can be in work for the future of their children is important.
Mr. Virendra Sharma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister commit to securing and simplifying the future for people up and down the UK and pledge to protect the pensions dashboard?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman that I believe that the responsible minister has made an announcement about the fact that the pensions dashboard will be going ahead, and I think there will be some piloting and a consultation on looking at that.
John Hayes.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister appreciates the plight of the poorest Britons who, when they've loved and lost, struggle to be able to afford to provide a dignified and decent funeral, because she established the Children's Funeral Fund. Nevertheless, the grant available to the poorest people for this purpose has been frozen at £700 since 2003, and 30% of people get nothing at all. The Right Honourable Birkenhead's Select Committee recommended changes in 2016, which should meet me and him and others. It's not just our task or our duty, it's our mission to help to heal the broken-hearted.
Can I say to my right honourable friend that obviously he has raised an important and sensitive issue, and none of us want to see a situation where people are not able to afford to do that, what is a terrible task in that they have seen a loved one die, but to be able to give them a proper funeral and is important to families and to individuals. As he will know, the funeral expenses payments do continue to cover the necessary costs involved with funerals and cremations, and up to £700 for other funeral expenses, and some changes have been made to ensure that other contributions are not deducted from the funeral expenses payment, so that there is no change to that. Can I suggest to my right honourable friend that the position that he has put forward sounds to me like a budget submission, which he might wish to put forward to my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Meg Hillier.
Mr. Speaker, because of funding pressures, many schools are cutting short the school week. So what's the Prime Minister's message to parents whose children will be out of school for half a day a week?
Can I say to the honourable lady, first of all, I think we should all pay tribute to the work that our teachers and head teachers do across the country. And I'm pleased that 1.9 million more children are now in good or outstanding schools. We're backing schools with an extra £1.3 billion over the next 2 years. Per pupil funding being protected in real terms. But we're doing more than that. The Department for Education is working with schools to help reduce their non-staffing costs. That includes up to £1 billion through better procurement. That means that teachers will be able to do what they do best, which is carry on teaching.
Julian Knight.
Mr. Speaker, last Monday in Solihull, the lives of a mother and daughter, Kola Salim and Raneem Uday, were brought to an end after a double stabbing outside their home. I have met with Kola and Raneem's family, seen firsthand their quiet dignity, clear love for one another, and desire to see something good come from their loss. Would the Prime Minister join me in sending our thoughts and prayers to Kola and Raneem's family, and thanking our emergency services, police liaison officers, and the wider community of Solihull, which has shown great stoicism and heartfelt concern as this tragedy has unfolded?
Well, can I say to my honourable friend, I think the whole House will want to join me in sending our deepest sympathies to the families and loved ones of Kola Salim and Raneem Uday. This is a terrible tragedy. I'm sure my honourable friend understands I can't comment on the ongoing investigation that is taking place, but he is right to draw attention to the work of the emergency services. And indeed, I will join him in paying tribute not only to our emergency services, but also to the local community for the support that they have shown at this very difficult time.
Tonia Antoniazzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to the patients group End Our Pain, there has been a near total refusal of NHS trusts to back applications for medical cannabis. The Home Secretary has only paid lip service to 2 high-profile cases and not proposed a workable solution for other desperate children and adults across the UK. Now, the Prime Minister could show real leadership and solve this for hundreds of families, but will she?
To the honourable lady that, first of all, I offer deepest sympathies to those who are suffering severe conditions where other treatments have not been effective, and that these cannabis-based medicinal products have the potential to help. That's why the Home Secretary has announced that the law will be changed so specialist clinicians will be able to legally prescribe cannabis-based medicinal products to patients with an exceptional clinical need. Now, while that change is taking place, the expert panel has been established, an expert panel of clinicians, as an interim to ensure that treatment is safe and effective. So we're not just waiting for the legislation to change, we will change the law, but we've also put in place a procedure to ensure that those cases can be considered properly.
O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, honourable and right honourable members from across the House will join the people of Gibraltar in celebrating their National Day on the 10th of September. Will my right honourable friend confirm that it's Her Majesty's Government's full resolve that Gibraltar and its people will be fully included in all aspects of the withdrawal negotiations and future arrangements, and that no other party will have any veto on that?
Can I say to my old friend, I'm very happy to give him that reassurance and that commitment on behalf of this government. And can I say that I send best wishes to the people of Gibraltar for their celebrations on the 10th of September.
Yassine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, Bedford Maternity Unit closed its doors 6 times due to capacity and staffing issues. This is disgraceful. Will she admit now that starving our NHS of funds has had very devastating consequences? And will she now reinstate the nursing bursaries to address the shameful national shortage of 3,500 midwives and fund our NHS properly.
Can I simply point out to the honourable gentleman that health funding in his area will be £1.5 billion this year. And thanks to our funding commitments, this is an increase of over £60 million on the previous year, a cash increase of 4.2%. The Bedfordshire Clinical Commissioning Group will receive a cash increase of 4.34% on last year. We are putting extra money into the National Health Service, but more than that, we have committed future funding, a 5-year funding programme and a 10-year plan for the National Health Service to deliver the services that patients need.
Steve Baker.
Speaker, with Exit Day, with Exit Day fast approaching, will my right honourable friend now give instructions to the whole of government that the first priority of every department must be domestic preparedness, whether we leave the EU with a deal or without?
Well, can I first of all commend my honourable friend for the work that he did when he was a minister on this particular issue? Can I assure him that the Brexit Department, the Department for Exiting the European Union, has indeed stepped up the work on preparations. We have 6,400 civil servants working on EU exit. There's an additional 1,850 recruited in the pipeline, so we can accelerate preparations as necessary. We've passed necessary laws such as the EU Withdrawal Act, an historic act passed in this House. Obviously, there are other pieces of legislation like the Sanctions Act, the Nuclear Safeguards Bill. We're publishing the technical notices on no-deal preparations. We are ensuring that our preparations are being made, and our preparations are made for every eventuality. We're working for a good deal. We prepare for every eventuality.
Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister agree with the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester when he says, after losing 2,000 officers in 8 years, that the public have to accept that without more resources, it's impossible for the police to respond to crimes like car break-ins, antisocial behaviour, even property theft? Is that just the reality of policing under this government, or will the Prime Minister commit to give our police the funding they need?
I say to the honourable gentleman that obviously we understand the demand on policing, that is changing. It is becoming increasingly complex, and that's why, after speaking to forces in England and Wales, we provided a comprehensive funding settlement that will increase total investment in the police system by over £460 million in this year, 2018-19. And he might like to note that the force has a higher number of officers per head of population than the England and Wales average.
Alberto Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this morning, my daughter Sophie, on her own merit, along with thousands of other school children, attended her first day in grammar school. What message does the Prime Minister have for my daughter Sophie and the thousands of other children who, as I say, on their own merit, secured a place at grammar school?
Well, can I say, first I would say well done to his daughter Sophie and those others. Secondly, I would say to Sophie and others, this is a country where how far you get on in life should depend on how hard you work and your talents and abilities. A good education is crucial to that. So I would say, enjoy your time at school, make the best of your time at school, because education is the key that unlocks the door to your future.
Mike Kane.
Mr. Speaker, 25,000 jobs and 30 million passengers depend upon Manchester Airport in my constituency. But with no World Trade Organisation fallback position after Brexit, can the Prime Minister explain why the government has downgraded the possibility of an aviation sector deal?
Wow. Now, I can say to the honourable gentleman, not only are we, of course, making sure that the arrangements in relation to aviation will be what they should be when we leave the European Union, but we have been working with the aerospace sector generally and with aviation to ensure that as we put in place our modern industrial strategy, we see the jobs being not just maintained but also created across the country that provide those high-skilled and well-paid jobs for people in these important sectors, and aviation is an important sector for the UK. say.
Andrea Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In this year's local election, we elected my first Conservative councillor in the constituency, a wonderful lady called Nick. But since her election, she's been subjected to the most awful abuse by Labour and Momentum activists. Police have been called to her home several times, have hung around her home late at night. One has allegedly trolled her via his dead wife's social media account. Her special needs son is now too scared to leave the house. Would the Prime Minister join me in condemning this abhorrent intimidation of elected officials? Is this supposed to be the kinder, gentler politics of the Labour Party?
Can I first of all say to my honourable friend that I congratulate, I think it's Lynn, who for her election. Can I say I'm sorry that she has been subjected to this appalling series of attacks of various sorts since that election. Across our democracy, we have different opinions about what we want to achieve, sometimes about how we achieve what we want to achieve. But it is right that we are able to put those opinions forward. The democratic process means we put our views to the public, and the public choose, as they have chosen my honourable friend's constituent to represent them on the council. And she should be able to get on with that job of representing her constituents, free of hatred and free of the abuse that she appears to be getting. And I say that this should be condemned on all sides of this House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It has been reported this morning that the Treasury and Number 10 are blocking plans for legally binding 3-year tenancies for private renters. This is of great concern to private renters in my constituency, including many families sending their children back to school this week, not knowing where they will be living this time next year. Will the Prime Minister make a clear promise to private tenants that they will be entitled to 3-year tenancies in law?
Can I say to the honourable lady that we are keen to support tenants to access longer, more secure tenancies, whilst also ensuring, obviously, landlords are able to recover their property when needed. The consultation on overcoming the barriers to longer tenancies in the private rented sector closed on the 26th of August. It considered the various barriers to longer tenancies and how to overcome them. It did propose a new 3-year tenancy model with a 6-month break clause. We asked for views on viability and on how that could be implemented. We are now analysing those responses, and we will provide information on the next steps once we have done that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know my right honourable friend will be as concerned as me, and as I'm sure the whole House, to hear of and see the carcasses of nearly 90 elephants near a wildlife sanctuary in Botswana. This coincides with Botswana's anti-poaching unit being disarmed. Will she do more to tackle this scourge, including through our aid budget, to fund more rangers and more training through the MOD?
Can I say to my honourable friend that the whole issue of the illegal wildlife trade is a very important one. It was an issue that I touched on when I was in South Africa, in fact, in the presence of, and there was a minister from Botswana there at the time. We are holding a major conference later this year on the illegal wildlife trade, because we see it is important, and we are bringing people together across the international community to consider how we can further deal with this.
Chris Rain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, prominent Tory Brexiteers promised that Wales would not lose out on funding if it voted to leave the EU. Wales has received £5.3 billion in European structural funds since 2000, the highest level in the UK and Europe. Will the Prime Minister guarantee here and now that Wales will not lose out on these fundings should the UK leave the EU?
First of all, can I say to the honourable gentleman, he says, should the UK leave the EU? The UK is leaving the European Union, and that will happen on the 29th of March next year. What we will be doing is, what we are doing, is reassessing, looking at the structural funds that have come from the European Union in the past. We are setting up the Shared Prosperity Fund. That will ensure that we're looking at disparities within regions and between and within nations and between the nations of the United Kingdom. And we are working to ensure that we have a system and a deal with the European Union for the future that works for the whole of the United Kingdom.
Gillian Keegan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like my right honourable friend, I have also recently returned from Africa, where I visited a refugee camp in Tanzania with Plan. witnessing the transformative impact of UK aid protecting women from sexual violence and giving children access to education. With the UN General Assembly fast approaching, can the Prime Minister outline what preparations she has made for the Global Compact on Refugees?
Can I say to my honourable friend that, yes, we are looking at... It's not just us looking at what is being proposed in terms of the Global Compact for Refugees. We have actually been part of the discussions about what should be in that Global Compact for Refugees, and this partly reflects the speech that I gave, one of the speeches I gave when I was at UNGA in 2016, shortly after I became Prime Minister, about the need for us to look at, as internationally, how we deal with migration and refugees. And I want to see a better ability to differentiate between illegal economic migrants and refugees, because I think that by doing that, we will be able to ensure that we're providing the support necessary for refugees.
Mr. Vincent Cable.
Can the Prime Minister explain why the process by which European nationals acquire settled status requires 59 pages of guidance? Isn't this simply providing 59 ways of saying no in a continued hostile environment?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that the system, as he will know, was launched not that long ago. It is very clear. It's an online system. It's a simple system. We guarantee that that would be what we provided, and is what we have delivered.
Exactly. Stephen Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wilkins is a central Scotland department store, and over the years has become something of an institution in Stirling, and it recently announced that it was to close. While the Scottish Government continued to delay any changes to the business rate system in Scotland, which is killing our high street, can the Prime Minister assure me that there will be some action to level the playing field between high street businesses and online sellers?
Can I say to my honourable friend that he's right to highlight the importance of using the tax system in a responsible way. This is very important. Businesses, it's right that businesses make a contribution to their local area through the business rates, but this should be as fair as possible. That's why we've improved the system and made changes worth over £10 billion to businesses, including taking 600,000 small businesses out of paying business rates altogether. Because Britain's retailers, be they high street shops or independent traders, are a crucial part of our economy. They create jobs, they inject billions into our economy, and I think all those responsible for these tax systems should deal with them responsibly and recognise the impact that the decisions they make have.
I think we should wrap up with a new young member seeking to make an early mark, Mr. Geoffrey Robinson.
I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister aware that next Wednesday, 12th of September, we have the committee stage for my private member's bill, organ donation deemed consent? I wish to thank her personally for the tremendous support she has given, and of course my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition. Her support and the government time and the Minister's support has been vital. Can she assure us she can sustain that support now through committee stage, in which case we can have it through the Commons procedures by the end of the year and have an act on the statute book early in the new year? An act I think the whole House would be pleased to see, an act whose sole purpose, Mr. Speaker, is to save, preserve, enhance lives. Thank you.
Say to the honourable gentleman that this is an important piece of legislation. As he says, it will make a difference to people's lives. And we have, as he said, given it our backing. We will continue to give this legislation our backing precisely because of the importance and the impact it will have on people.
Thank you. Order. Well, we are coming now to a statement of the Prime Minister. If the point of order relates to something that has happened during Prime Minister's questions, I will hear it. But if it's simply that it's convenient for the Honourable Lady, I'm afraid she'll have to wait till later.
It's an urgent matter that is happening and was developing during Prime Minister's questions, Mr. Speaker.
I'll give the Honourable Lady the benefit of the doubt while the Prime Minister consumes some water or otherwise. Very well. Point of order, Hannah Bardell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I seek your guidance. My constituent Kweku Araboli is facing imminent deportation to Ghana, where he hasn't lived since he was 4 years old. Despite his rehabilitation and reform since his release from prison, working for a number of UK universities and the Special Forces, the Prime Minister has not responded directly to the letters I have written to her and the points I have made. What can I do to ensure that she responds directly and reviews this decision?
The short and honest answer is the Honourable Lady can wait patiently and in an egalitarian spirit, like every other member, for the opportunity to put a question to the Prime Minister at the appropriate time, rather than using the bogus device of a contrived point of order inappropriately to try to put her point on the record. But because I'm a decent and charitable soul, I'm happy to admire her ingenuity on this occasion, but I wouldn't encourage her to use this ruse too frequently. We'll leave it there. Statement, the Prime Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to update the House on the investigation into the attempted murder of Sergei and Yulia Skripal and the subsequent poisoning of Dawn Sturgis and Charlie Rowley earlier this year. This was a sickening and despicable act in which a devastatingly toxic nerve agent known as Novichok was used to attack our country. It left 4 people fighting for their lives and 1 innocent woman dead. And I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with the family of Dawn Sturgis in particular, following their tragic loss. In March, I set out for the House why the government concluded that the Russian state was culpable for the attempted murder of Mr. Skripal and his daughter. I also said that while we all share a sense of impatience to bring those responsible to justice, as a nation that believes in the rule of law, we would give the police the space and time to carry out their investigation properly. Since then, around 250 detectives have trawled through more than 11,000 hours of CCTV and taken more than 1,400 statements. Working around the clock, they have carried out painstaking and methodical work to ascertain exactly which individuals were responsible and the methods they used to carry out this attack. Mr. Speaker, this forensic investigation has now produced sufficient evidence for the Independent Director of Public Prosecutions to bring charges against 2 Russian nationals for the conspiracy to murder Sergei Skripal, the attempted murder of Sergei and Yulia Skripal and Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, the use and possession of Novichok, and causing grievous bodily harm with intent to Yulia Skripal and Nick Bailey. This morning, the police have set out how the 2 Russian nationals travelled under the names of Alexander Petrov and Ruslan Bushirov, names the police believe to be aliases. They arrived at Gatwick Airport at 3 p.m. on Friday, the 2nd of March, having flown from Moscow on flight SU-2588. They travelled by train to London Victoria, then on to Waterloo, before going to the City Stay Hotel in Bow Road, East London. They stayed there on both Friday and Saturday evenings, and traces of Novichok were found in their hotel room. On Saturday, the 3rd of March, they visited Salisbury, arriving at approximately 2:25 p.m. and leaving less than 2 hours later at 4:10 p.m. The police are confident this was for reconnaissance of the Salisbury area. On Sunday, the 4th of March, they made the same journey, travelling by underground from Bow to Waterloo Station at approximately 8:05 a.m, before continuing by train to Salisbury. The police have today released CCTV footage of the 2 men, which clearly places them in the immediate vicinity of the Skripal's house at 11:58 a.m, which the police say was moments before the attack. They left Salisbury and returned to Waterloo, arriving at approximately 4:45 p.m, and boarded the Underground at approximately 6:30 p.m. to Heathrow, from where they returned to Moscow on flight SU-2585, departing at 10:30 p.m. Mr. Speaker, this hard evidence has enabled the Independent Crown Prosecution Service to conclude they have a sufficient basis on which to bring charges against these 2 men for the attack in Salisbury. The same 2 men are now also the prime suspects in the case of Dawn Sturgis and Charlie Rowley too. There is no other line of inquiry beyond this. And the police today have formally linked the attack on the Skripals and the events in Amesbury, such that it now forms one investigation. There are good reasons for doing so. Our own analysis, together with yesterday's report from the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, has confirmed that the exact same chemical nerve agent was used in both cases. There is no evidence to suggest that Dawn and Charlie may have been deliberately targeted, but rather were victims of the reckless disposal of this agent. The police have today released further details of the small glass counterfeit perfume bottle and box discovered in Charlie Rowley's house, which was found to contain this nerve agent. And the manner in which the bottle was modified leaves no doubt it was a cover for smuggling the weapon into the country and for the delivery method for the attack against the Skripal's front door. Mr. Speaker, the police investigation into the poisoning of Dawn and Charlie is ongoing, and the police are today appealing for further information. But were these two suspects within our jurisdiction, there would be a clear basis in law for their arrest for murder. Mr. Speaker, we repeatedly asked Russia to account for what happened in Salisbury in March, and they have replied with obfuscation and lies. This is including trying to pass the blame for the attack onto terrorists, onto our international partners, and even onto the future mother-in-law of Yulia Skripal. They even claimed that I myself invented Novichok. Their attempts to hide the truth by pushing out a deluge of disinformation simply reinforces their culpability. As we made clear in March, only Russia had the technical means, operational experience and motive to carry out the attack. Novichok nerve agents were developed by the Soviet Union in the 1980s under a programme codenamed Foliant. Within the past decade, Russia has produced and stockpiled small quantities of these agents, long after it signed the Chemical Weapons Convention. And during the 2000s, Russia commenced a programme to test means of delivering nerve agents, including by application to door handles. We were right to say in March that the Russian state was responsible. And now we have identified the individuals involved, we can go even further. Mr. Speaker, just as the police investigation has enabled the CPS to bring charges against the two suspects, so the security and intelligence agencies have carried out their own investigations into the organisation behind this attack. Based on this work, I can today tell the House that, based on a body of intelligence, the government has concluded that the two individuals named by the police and CPS are officers from the Russian Military Intelligence Service, also known as the GRU. The GRU is a highly disciplined organisation with a well-established chain of command. So this was not a rogue operation. It was almost certainly also approved outside the GRU at a senior level of the Russian state. Mr. Speaker, the House will appreciate that I cannot go into details about the work of our security and intelligence agencies, but we will be briefing opposition leaders and others on Privy Council terms, and also giving further detail to the Intelligence and Security Committee. Let me turn to our response to this appalling attack and the further knowledge we now have about those responsible. First, with respect to the two individuals, as the Crown Prosecution Service and Police announced earlier today, we have obtained a European arrest warrant and will shortly issue an Interpol red notice. Of course, Russia has repeatedly refused to allow its nationals to stand trial overseas, citing a bar on extradition in its constitution. So, as we found following the murder of Alexander Litvinenko, any formal extradition request in this case would be futile. But should either of these individuals ever again travel outside Russia, we will take every possible step to detain them, to extradite them, and to bring them to face justice here in the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, this chemical weapons attack on our soil was part of a wider pattern of Russian behaviour that persistently seeks to undermine our security and that of our allies around the world. They fomented conflict in the Donbass, illegally annexed Crimea, repeatedly violated the national airspace of several European countries, and mounted a sustained campaign of cyber espionage and election interference. They were behind a violent attempted coup in Montenegro and a Russian-made missile launched from territory held by Russian-backed separatists brought down MH17. We must step up our collective effort to protect ourselves in response to this threat, and that is exactly what we have done since the attack in March, both domestically and collectively with our allies. We've introduced a new power to detain people at the UK border to determine whether they are engaged in hostile state activity. We've introduced the Magnitsky Amendment to the Sanctions and Money Laundering Act in response to the violation of human rights. And we have radically stepped up our activity against illicit finance entering our country. We also expelled 23 Russian diplomats who had been identified as undeclared Russian intelligence officers, fundamentally degrading Russian intelligence capability in the UK for years to come. And in collective solidarity and in recognition of the shared threat posed to our allies, 28 other countries, as well as NATO, joined us in expelling a total of over 150 Russian intelligence officers, the largest collective expulsion ever. Since then, the EU agreed a comprehensive package to tackle hybrid threats. The G7 agreed a rapid response mechanism to share intelligence on hostile state activity. NATO has substantially strengthened its collective deterrence, including through a new cyber operations centre. And the US has announced additional sanctions against Russia for the Salisbury attack. Mr. Speaker, our allies